Marcus Rivera crouched behind the overturned delivery truck, his breath coming in controlled bursts as he surveyed the abandoned shopping center through his binoculars. 3 weeks had passed since the first reports of the infection surfaced in downtown Dallas, and now the entire metropolitan area had become a hunting ground for the undead. The former Marine sergeant adjusted his tactical vest and whispered into his radio headset, "Phoenix Base, this is Recon 1. I count approximately 40 hostiles in the main courtyard, moving in typical herd formation. They're clustered around what appears to be survivors trapped in the sporting goods store." His team of 6 survivors had been operating out of an abandoned fire station for the past week, using military precision and coordinated tactics to rescue scattered groups of civilians while gathering crucial intelligence about zombie behavior patterns. Behind him, Rebecca Walsh checked her modified crossbow for the 3rd time, the former police detective's sharp green eyes scanning for alternative routes through the maze of abandoned vehicles. "Marcus, we've got movement on the east wing," she whispered, pointing toward a group of figures stumbling between the storefronts. "Looks like a fresh pack, maybe 15 strong, and they're heading straight for the main group." The zombies moved with an unsettling coordination that had evolved over the past weeks, no longer the mindless wanderers from the initial outbreak but something far more dangerous, predators that had learned to hunt in organized clusters. Tommy Chen, their communications specialist despite his youth at barely 19, hunched over his portable radio array that he'd cobbled together from salvaged electronics. "I'm picking up a distress signal from inside the store," he reported, his fingers dancing across the dials. "It's weak but definitely human. Sounds like maybe 4 or 5 people, and they're running low on ammunition." The tactical situation required split-second decision-making, exactly the kind of scenario that Marcus had drilled his team for endlessly during their training sessions at the fire station. Jake Morrison, the team's demolitions expert and former construction foreman, shouldered his modified shotgun and grinned despite the circumstances. "Just say the word, Sarge. I've got enough surprises in my pack to clear us a path and create one hell of a distraction." The big man's confidence was infectious, though Marcus knew they couldn't rely on explosives alone. Noise attracted every zombie within a mile radius, and their escape routes were already limited. Sarah Kim, their medic and former emergency room nurse, finished organizing her medical supplies and gave Marcus a firm nod. "If there are wounded inside, I'll need at least 10 minutes to stabilize anyone for transport. Can your tactical plan buy me that time?" Her question cut straight to the heart of their dilemma. Rescue missions always came down to time management and risk assessment, balancing the lives they could save against the lives they might lose in the attempt. The 6th member of their team, David Torres, emerged from his position near the service entrance where he'd been watching their rear approach. The former security guard possessed an almost supernatural ability to predict zombie movement patterns, a skill that had saved their lives multiple times during previous missions. "Something's different about these groups," he reported quietly. "They're not just following scent trails anymore. I swear they're coordinating their approach vectors like they're trying to surround the building." This observation sent a chill through the team because it confirmed their worst fears about the infection's progression. The zombies were adapting, learning, becoming more dangerous with each passing day. Marcus pulled out his tactical map of the shopping center, a hand-drawn schematic that Rebecca had created during their reconnaissance missions over the past week. "Here's what we're going to do," he began, his voice carrying the authority that had kept them alive through 7 successful rescue operations. "Tommy, I need you to set up the signal repeater on that cell tower to boost our communications range and coordinate with Phoenix Base for immediate extraction. Rebecca and David will take the north approach through the department store, using David's predictive abilities to avoid the main herd while creating a secondary escape route." His plan unfolded with military precision, each team member understanding their role in the complex dance of survival that had become their daily reality. "Jake, you're with me on the direct approach through the main entrance, but we're not going in loud unless absolutely necessary. Sarah, you'll establish a triage position in the pharmacy area where you can treat wounded while maintaining visual contact with both approach teams." The beauty of their tactical approach lay not in overwhelming firepower but in coordination, communication, and the hard-learned understanding that zombies, despite their fearsome reputation, followed predictable behavioral patterns that could be exploited by disciplined teams working together. As they prepared to execute the rescue operation, each team member checked their equipment one final time, weapons cleaned and loaded, communication devices tested, emergency medical supplies distributed, and escape routes memorized. The zombies below continued their ominous shuffling around the sporting goods store, unaware that above them, 6 determined survivors were about to demonstrate that humanity's greatest weapon against the undead wasn't superior technology or overwhelming force, but rather the tactical coordination and selfless cooperation that had allowed their species to survive every previous existential threat throughout history. The synchronized movement began with David and Rebecca disappearing into the shadows of the department store's loading dock, their footsteps silent against the concrete as they navigated through the maze of abandoned shopping carts and debris. Marcus watched through his scope as the two figures melted into the darkness, Rebecca's police training evident in her fluid movements while David seemed to possess an almost preternatural awareness of where the zombies would turn their attention next. Tommy had already scrambled up the maintenance ladder to the cell tower, his equipment pack bouncing against his back as he climbed with the agility of youth and desperation. The radio crackled softly in Marcus's earpiece as Tommy's voice confirmed his position. "Phoenix Base, this is Recon 1 Communications. Signal repeater is online and I have visual on the entire shopping complex. The main herd is starting to spread out, but they're still focused on the sporting goods store." Jake crouched beside Marcus, his weathered hands steady as he assembled an improvised distraction device from road flares and a kitchen timer. "You know, Sarge, back in construction we always said the most dangerous part of any job was when everything was going according to plan," he muttered with dark humor. "That's usually when the building decided to surprise you." The wisdom in those words wasn't lost on Marcus, who had seen too many military operations fall apart the moment soldiers started feeling confident about their tactical superiority. Through his binoculars, he could see Sarah moving through the pharmacy section of the complex, her medical training evident in the efficient way she cleared potential treatment areas while keeping one eye on the zombie movements outside. The former nurse had adapted to their dangerous new reality with remarkable speed, transforming from someone who saved lives in sterile hospital conditions to someone who performed emergency medicine while undead creatures lurked just beyond the windows. Rebecca's voice whispered through the radio network, her tone professional despite the circumstances. "North team is in position at the department store's main floor. David's tracking indicates the zombies are following a patrol pattern, almost like they're guarding something. We have a clear path to the sporting goods store's rear entrance, but there's something strange about their formation." This observation aligned with David's earlier concerns about the zombies' evolving behavior patterns, suggesting that the infection wasn't just creating mindless predators but was somehow enhancing their collective intelligence. Marcus felt the familiar weight of command responsibility settling across his shoulders as he prepared to make decisions that would determine whether they all returned to Phoenix Base alive. "Tommy, what's the status on our trapped survivors?" Marcus asked, knowing that timing would be everything in the next phase of their operation. The young communications specialist's voice carried a note of urgency as he responded. "I'm detecting at least 4 distinct voices, and it sounds like they've got maybe 20 rounds of ammunition left between them. There's also something else, I'm picking up radio chatter from another survivor group about 3 miles northeast of our position, but their signal is getting weaker." The possibility of additional survivors in the area complicated their mission parameters, but Marcus knew they couldn't save everyone and attempting to do so would likely result in losing everyone. Jake finished his preparations and looked up at Marcus with the kind of grim determination that had probably served him well during decades of dangerous construction work. "Distraction device is ready, Sarge. When you give the word, I can create enough noise and light to draw most of that herd away from the main building, but it's going to be like ringing the dinner bell for every zombie within 5 miles. The tactical trade-off was stark. They could save the immediate survivors but would likely attract enough attention to make their own escape exponentially more dangerous. David's voice cut through their contemplation with urgent precision. Movement pattern is shifting. The main group is starting to spread out in search formation, and I think they've detected something. We need to move now before they lock down the entire area. The moment of decision had arrived, and Marcus felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that had carried him through countless dangerous situations during his military service. All teams, this is Recon 1. Execute rescue protocol on my mark. Rebecca and David, initiate silent approach to rear entrance. Tommy, maintain overwatch and prepare for emergency extraction coordination. Sarah, move to your triage position and prepare for incoming wounded. Jake, hold position with the distraction device until I give the signal. Each team member acknowledged their orders with crisp military efficiency, their months of training and survival together having forged them into a unit that functioned with the precision of a well-oiled machine. As Marcus began his approach toward the sporting goods store's main entrance, he couldn't shake the feeling that this rescue operation would test every skill they had developed and possibly reveal new dangers they weren't prepared to face. The zombies continued their ominous shuffling, unaware that their seemingly random movements were being analyzed, predicted, and exploited by humans who had learned that survival in the apocalypse required not just courage and firepower, but also intelligence, teamwork, and the willingness to risk everything for people they had never met. The first sign that their carefully planned operation was about to encounter unexpected complications came when David's urgent whisper crackled through the radio network. All teams, abort silent approach. The zombies aren't just patrolling, they're setting up an ambush pattern around the store entrances. This isn't random behavior anymore. Marcus froze in his crouch behind a concrete planter, his tactical mind racing to process this new information while Jake beside him muttered a string of creative profanity that would have made a drill sergeant proud. Through his scope, Marcus could now see what David had observed. The zombies weren't simply wandering around the sporting goods store but were actually positioning themselves to cover potential escape routes with a coordination that defied everything they had learned about the undead's capabilities. Rebecca's voice joined the radio chatter with barely controlled tension. North team confirms David's assessment. I count at least 12 zombies positioned to intercept anyone coming out of the rear entrance, and they're not moving from their positions despite obvious distractions. It's like they're following a tactical plan. The implications of this development sent a chill through Marcus that had nothing to do with the evening air, because it suggested that the infection had progressed far beyond their previous understanding and the zombies were evolving into something far more dangerous than mindless predators. Tommy's voice cut through their growing concern with urgent clarity. Recon 1, I'm monitoring the survivors' radio frequency and their situation is deteriorating rapidly. They're down to maybe 10 rounds of ammunition and something is trying to break through their barricaded entrance. We need to move now or we're going to be conducting a recovery mission instead of a rescue. The young communications specialist's assessment forced Marcus to make the kind of split-second decision that separated successful military leaders from those who got their people killed, and he knew that hesitation at this point would doom both his team and the trapped survivors. All teams, switch to dynamic assault protocol. Jake, deploy your distraction device at the northwest corner to draw the primary group away from the main entrance. Rebecca and David, hold your position and prepare to provide covering fire for our extraction. Sarah, be ready for immediate casualty treatment because this is about to get messy. The shift from silent infiltration to active combat operations required a complete mental adjustment, but Marcus's team had trained for exactly this kind of tactical flexibility during their weeks of preparation at Phoenix Base. Jake's grin was visible even in the dim light as he armed his improvised device and prepared to sprint toward the deployment position. Just like old times, Sarge, except instead of worried about OSHA violations, we're worried about getting eaten alive. I'd say that's a step down in working conditions. The demolitions expert's ability to maintain his sense of humor under pressure was one of the qualities that made him invaluable to their survival, but Marcus knew that humor was often just another way of dealing with the constant fear that came with their dangerous lifestyle. The distraction device detonated with a brilliant flash and thunderous roar that sent the main group of zombies shambling toward the noise with the single-minded focus that had initially made them seem so predictable. However, the smaller groups positioned around the store entrances remained in place, confirming David's assessment that these creatures were operating under some kind of coordinated intelligence that allowed them to resist obvious diversions. Marcus sprinted toward the sporting goods store's main entrance with Jake covering his approach, their synchronized movement the result of countless hours of practice in similar scenarios. The zombies guarding the entrance turned toward them with an alertness that was deeply unsettling, their movements lacking the sluggish uncertainty that had characterized the early days of the outbreak. "Sarah, incoming wounded!" Marcus shouted as he reached the store's shattered glass doors, where he could see 4 survivors huddled behind an improvised barricade made from camping equipment and exercise machines. The trapped civilians looked up at him with a mixture of hope and terror, their faces gaunt from days of stress and limited food supplies. Among them, Marcus could see a middle-aged woman clutching a young boy who couldn't have been more than 10 years old, an elderly man with what appeared to be a leg injury, and a teenage girl who was gripping a nearly empty pistol with white-knuckled determination. "We're here to get you out," Marcus announced while Jake took up a defensive position at the entrance, his shotgun trained on the approaching zombies. "But we need to move fast and follow our instructions exactly. No questions, no hesitation, just do what we tell you and we'll all make it out alive." The woman with the child looked up at him with desperate gratitude. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, this is my son Tyler. That's my father Robert and my niece Amanda. We've been trapped here for 3 days and we thought." Her voice trailed off as the reality of rescue began to sink in, but Marcus cut her off with professional efficiency. "Explanations later, survival now. Jake, what's our situation?" The demolitions expert's expression had grown serious as he monitored the zombie movements outside. "They're regrouping faster than expected, and that coordinated behavior David mentioned is getting more pronounced. I count at least 20 hostiles moving in a deliberate formation toward our position, and they're not falling for the distraction anymore." This development confirmed Marcus's worst fears about the infection's progression, but there was no time to analyze the implications when lives hung in the balance and their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. The sound of shattering glass from the store's rear entrance announced that their carefully planned extraction was about to become a fighting retreat, as David's voice exploded through the radio with urgent intensity. "Rear entrance is compromised. Multiple hostiles breaching through the loading dock, and they're moving with purpose, not just following noise or scent. These things are actually coordinating their attack patterns." Marcus quickly assessed their deteriorating tactical situation while helping Robert Walsh to his feet, noting that the elderly man's leg injury was more severe than initially apparent and would significantly slow their movement to the extraction point. Jennifer Walsh gathered her son Tyler close to her body while Amanda checked her pistol's remaining ammunition with the grim efficiency of someone who had learned hard lessons about survival during their 3-day ordeal. "Jake, we need an exit strategy that doesn't involve the main corridors," Marcus commanded while his mind raced through alternative routes he had memorized during their pre-mission reconnaissance. The demolitions expert was already scanning the store's layout, his experience by identifying structural weak points that could be exploited. "There's an emergency exit through the storage area that connects to the service tunnel system, but we'll need to blast through a security door that's been reinforced with additional barricading material. The option would create significant noise and potentially attract every zombie in the immediate area, but remaining in their current position was rapidly becoming a death sentence as the coordinated undead forces closed in from multiple directions." Rebecca's voice cut through their planning with tactical precision. "North Team has identified the source of the coordination problem. There's something in the main group that's different from the others, larger, moving with more intelligence, and the other zombies are responding to its movements like it's giving them orders." This revelation struck Marcus like a physical blow because it suggested that the infection had produced not just stronger zombies but actual leadership variants that could direct the actions of lesser undead, transforming random encounters into organized military-style operations. Tommy's voice joined the radio chatter with mounting urgency. "Phoenix Base is reporting zombie movement throughout the entire metropolitan area, all heading in our general direction. Whatever's happening here is attracting attention from a much wider radius than we anticipated." The young communications specialist's report confirmed Marcus's growing suspicion that their rescue operation had somehow triggered a larger response that would threaten not just their immediate mission but potentially the safety of their entire survivor community. Sarah's medical assessment of Robert Walsh revealed that the man had suffered a compound fracture to his left tibia, meaning that any evacuation would require either carrying him or providing sufficient pain medication to allow him to move under his own power despite the injury. I can stabilize him for transport, but he's going to need immediate surgical attention once we reach Phoenix Base, she reported while injecting a local anesthetic and applying a temporary splint. The infection risk from the open wound is significant, and I'm not talking about the zombie virus. Jennifer Walsh looked between Marcus and her injured father with the desperate calculation of someone trying to balance impossible choices. He can't run, can he? I won't leave him behind, but I won't let my son die because we can't move fast enough. Her frank assessment of their situation demonstrated the kind of brutal honesty that had probably kept her family alive for 3 days while trapped in the store. Amanda suddenly looked up from her position near the front windows with alarm. They're not just surrounding us anymore, they're waiting for something. Look at how they've positioned themselves. Following her observation, Marcus could see that the zombies had indeed arranged themselves in what appeared to be a deliberate formation, creating a perimeter that suggested they were preparing for a coordinated assault rather than simply trying to reach the humans through brute force. David's voice confirmed their worst fears through the radio network. The leader variant is moving toward the main entrance. It's bigger than the others, moving with clear intelligence, and it's carrying what looks like a makeshift weapon. This thing isn't just coordinating, it's actually planning an assault. The tactical situation had evolved beyond anything they had encountered during their previous rescue operations, forcing Marcus to adapt their strategy to deal with an enemy that was apparently capable of military-style planning and coordination. Jake finished his assessment of the storage area exit and turned to Marcus with grim determination. I can blast us a way out, but the explosion will bring every zombie in the area running. We'll have maybe a 5-minute window to reach the extraction point before we're completely overrun. The demolitions experts' plan represented their best chance for survival, but it would also test every skill they had developed and require perfect coordination between all team members. Tommy, contact Phoenix Base and tell them to prepare for emergency medical treatment and possible defensive positions, Marcus ordered while making his final preparations for the explosive evacuation. Rebecca and David, prepare to provide covering fire for our movement to the service tunnels. Sarah, get Robert stabilized for rapid transport. As the team prepared for what would likely be the most dangerous phase of their rescue operation, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were witnessing a fundamental change in the nature of the zombie threat, one that would require them to completely rethink their survival strategies if they managed to make it back to base alive. The detonation that blasted through the reinforced storage door sent a shockwave through the entire building, followed immediately by the sound of every zombie in the area converging on their position with the terrifying efficiency of a military unit responding to a coordinated signal. Jake grabbed Robert Walsh under one arm while Marcus took the other, their combined strength allowing the injured man to move despite his compound fracture, though his barely suppressed groans of pain served as a constant reminder that their evacuation window was measured in minutes rather than hours. Jennifer Walsh followed closely behind them with Tyler clutched against her side, while Amanda brought up the rear with her pistol drawn and her young face set in the grim determination of someone who had aged years in just 3 days of survival. Sarah moved ahead of the group through the blasted doorway, her medical bag bouncing against her hip as she cleared the service tunnel of debris while simultaneously monitoring Robert's condition for signs of shock or blood loss that could prove fatal even if they escaped the immediate zombie threat. The service tunnels beneath the shopping complex had been designed for maintenance access and emergency evacuation, but the narrow concrete corridors now felt like a trap as the sound of pursuing zombies echoed through the passages with an organization that defied their previous understanding of undead behavior patterns. Tommy's voice crackled through their radio headsets with updates that grew increasingly dire with each transmission. Leader Variant has organized the main group into search teams that are systematically checking every possible escape route. This thing isn't just intelligent, it's demonstrating tactical knowledge that suggests either retained human memory or rapid learning capabilities that we never anticipated. The implications of Tommy's observation struck terror into Marcus's heart because it meant that their entire survival strategy, based on exploiting zombie predictability, was now obsolete in the face of creatures that could adapt and learn from human tactics. Rebecca and David's covering fire echoed through the tunnels as they held their position at the storage room, buying precious time for the evacuation team to reach the service exit that would lead them to the parking structure where their extraction vehicles waited. Recon 1, we're seeing coordinated flanking maneuvers from multiple zombie groups, Rebecca reported, her police training evident in the calm professionalism of her voice despite the chaos surrounding her position. They're not just following us anymore, they're trying to cut off our escape routes like they understand military tactics. David's voice joined hers with an observation that chilled everyone listening. The smaller zombies are taking orders from the leader variant through some kind of gesture-based communication system. I've watched it point toward specific positions and seen the others respond immediately with coordinated movement. This isn't just evolution, it's organized intelligence. The service tunnel curved toward the parking structure exit, but Marcus could hear the sound of zombies entering the tunnel system behind them, their pursuit characterized by the same methodical efficiency that had marked their defensive positions around the sporting goods store. Robert Walsh was beginning to show signs of severe blood loss despite Sarah's field treatment, his face growing pale and his breathing becoming shallow as the combination of pain medication and physical trauma took its toll on his body. "I need to stop and give him a blood volume expander," Sarah called out, but Marcus knew that stopping in the tunnel would likely mean death for the entire group. "How long can he last without it?" Marcus asked while helping to support the injured man's weight as they continued their desperate flight toward the exit. Sarah's medical assessment was brutally honest. "Maybe 10 minutes before he goes into shock, 15 at the outside. After that, even if we reach medical facilities, we might lose him anyway." Jennifer Walsh overheard the conversation and her face set with the terrible resolve of a mother choosing between impossible options. "Dad, can you hear me? We're almost out of here, but you need to stay conscious just a little longer." The old man's response was barely a whisper, but his determination was clear. "Don't you dare leave me behind, Jenny. I didn't survive 3 days of this hell just to give up when rescue finally arrives." Amanda suddenly stopped and raised her pistol toward the tunnel behind them. "I can hear them getting closer. Whatever that thing is doing to organize them, it's working. They're moving through these tunnels like they know exactly where we're going." The teenager's observation proved accurate as the sounds of pursuit grew closer and more organized, with distinct groups of zombies apparently taking different routes through the service tunnel system in an attempt to surround their escape route. Tommy's voice cut through their growing panic with desperately needed information. "I've got visual on the parking structure exit and it's clear, but Phoenix Base is reporting massive zombie movement throughout the entire area. Whatever signal that leader variant is sending, it's reaching creatures miles away from our position." The knowledge that their rescue operation had somehow triggered a citywide zombie response added another layer of urgency to their escape, because it meant that even reaching their vehicles might not guarantee safety if the entire metropolitan area was converging on their location. The service tunnel exit finally came into view ahead of them, a rectangle of dim daylight that represented their only chance of survival, but Marcus could also hear the unmistakable sounds of coordinated zombie movement in the parking structure above, suggesting that their enemies had successfully predicted their escape route and positioned forces to intercept them at the exit point. The parking structure exit revealed itself to be exactly the trap that Marcus had feared, with zombies positioned at strategic intervals throughout the concrete levels in formations that demonstrated military-style tactical thinking rather than the random clustering they had grown accustomed to fighting. Through the service tunnel's exit grating, David could observe at least 15 zombies spread across 2 parking levels, their positions carefully chosen to provide overlapping fields of coverage that would make any attempt to reach their vehicles a deadly gauntlet run. "They've turned our own extraction plan against us," Rebecca whispered through the radio as she and David finally caught up with the main group, both of them breathing hard from their fighting retreat through the service tunnels. "Somehow that leader variant anticipated our escape route and positioned forces to intercept us at the most vulnerable point in our evacuation." The tactical sophistication displayed by their enemies forced Marcus to acknowledge that they were no longer fighting mindless predators but rather an organized force that could think, plan, and adapt to human strategies with terrifying efficiency. Robert Walsh had reached the point where Sarah's medical assessment became academic, his face ashen and his breathing labored as blood loss and shock began shutting down his body's essential systems despite her best efforts to stabilize him with field medicine. "Marcus, I need to make a choice here," Sarah said with the clinical directness that had served her well during years of emergency room trauma cases. "I can give him a stimulant injection that might keep him conscious and mobile for another 10 minutes, but it will also increase his heart rate and potentially accelerate the blood loss from his injuries." The medic's frank assessment laid bare the cruel mathematics of survival that governed their daily existence in the post-apocalypse world, where every decision carried life or death consequences not just for individuals but for entire groups. Jennifer Walsh looked at her father with eyes that reflected years of accumulated grief and desperate love. "Dad, it's your choice. We won't make this decision for you." The elderly man's response came with surprising strength and clarity despite his deteriorating condition. "Give me the injection, Sarah. I didn't raise a daughter who abandons people, and I won't be the reason she starts now." His words carried the weight of paternal authority that transcended their desperate circumstances, reminding everyone present that courage and sacrifice weren't qualities exclusive to trained soldiers and survival experts. Jake had been studying the parking structure layout through the grating and turned to Marcus with a proposal that carried significant risks but might represent their only viable option for escape. "I can create a diversion using the remaining explosive charges to collapse part of the upper parking level, but it's going to bring down a lot of concrete and probably trap us on this level for several minutes while the dust settles." The demolitions expert's plan would eliminate some of the zombies positioned above them but would also limit their mobility and potentially attract even more attention from the creatures converging on their location from throughout the metropolitan area. Tommy's voice cut through their tactical discussion with urgent information from his Overwatch position. "Phoenix Base is reporting that the zombie convergence has accelerated beyond all previous patterns. Satellite imagery shows massive movement from every direction toward our position, and the estimated arrival time for the main wave is less than 20 minutes. The communication specialist's report meant that their window of opportunity was rapidly closing, and any plan that didn't get them moving toward their vehicles within the next few minutes would likely result in being overwhelmed by sheer numbers regardless of their tactical superiority." Amanda had been quietly observing the zombie positions through a different section of the grating and suddenly spoke up with an observation that changed everyone's tactical calculations. "They're not just guarding the exit, they're hurting us. Look at how they've left obvious gaps in their coverage that lead toward the northwest corner of the parking structure." The teenager's insight revealed that their enemies weren't simply trying to kill them but were attempting to force them into a specific area, suggesting a level of strategic thinking that went far beyond anything they had previously encountered. David confirmed Amanda's assessment with growing alarm. "She's right. The positioning is too deliberate to be coincidental. That leader variant isn't just coordinating an attack, it's trying to drive us into a predetermined kill zone where it probably has additional forces waiting." The revelation that they were being manipulated by zombie intelligence forced Marcus to completely reconsider their tactical options, because any plan based on exploiting apparent weaknesses in enemy positions might actually be playing directly into a sophisticated trap. Rebecca's police training had given her experience with criminal suspects who attempted to manipulate law enforcement responses, and she recognized similar patterns in the zombie positioning. "If they're trying to hurt us northwest, then our best option might be to do exactly the opposite and break through their strongest defensive position. It's counterintuitive, but it's also the direction they least expect us to choose." Her suggestion violated basic military tactics about avoiding enemy strength, but it also represented the kind of psychological misdirection that might work against opponents who were sophisticated enough to plan complex operations. Sarah finished administering the stimulant injection to Robert Walsh and helped him to his feet, noting with professional satisfaction that the medication was already improving his alertness and mobility despite the ongoing blood loss. "Whatever we're going to do, we need to move now," she declared while checking her medical supplies for items that could be quickly weaponized if necessary. "That injection will give him maybe 15 minutes of enhanced function, but after that he'll crash harder than before." The medic's assessment provided a concrete timeline for their escape attempt, but it also reminded everyone that failure would likely result in watching a brave man die after they had given him hope for survival. The decision to break through the zombies' strongest defensive position required a level of coordination that would test every skill Marcus's team had developed during their months of survival operations, but Rebecca's counterintuitive strategy represented their best chance against enemies who had demonstrated the ability to think and plan like military tacticians. Marcus quickly distributed their remaining ammunition while Jake prepared his final explosive charges. The demolitions experts weathered hands steady despite the knowledge that this would be their last opportunity to use overwhelming firepower before switching to close-quarters combat. Sarah helped Robert Walsh adjust to the stimulant medication that was already restoring color to his face and steadiness to his movements, though everyone understood that his enhanced mobility came at the cost of accelerated blood loss that would prove fatal if they didn't reach medical facilities within the next 15 minutes. Jennifer Walsh positioned herself between her father and her son Tyler, her maternal instincts warring with the tactical necessity of maintaining formation discipline during what would likely be the most dangerous phase of their escape from the shopping complex. Amanda checked her pistol one final time and looked up at Marcus with the kind of determined expression that reminded him why teenagers often made excellent soldiers when properly trained and motivated by circumstances beyond their control. "Tommy, we need constant updates on zombie movement patterns during our breakout," Marcus commanded through the radio while studying the parking structure layout one final time. Any change in their positioning or behavior could mean the difference between escape and getting trapped in their kill zone. The young communications specialist acknowledged the order from his overwatch position, but his voice carried a note of concern that had been absent from his earlier reports. "Recon 1, I'm detecting some kind of low-frequency signal emanating from the leader variant's position. It's not radio communication, but it seems to correspond with coordinated zombie movements throughout the area." This revelation suggested that the zombies had developed a form of communication that went beyond simple gesture-based commands, possibly explaining how they had managed to coordinate complex tactical operations across multiple locations simultaneously. David's reconnaissance of their chosen breakthrough point revealed that the strongest zombie defensive position consisted of at least 8 creatures positioned to provide mutual support, including what appeared to be 2 additional variants that were larger and more alert than the standard infected individuals. "These aren't just regular zombies anymore," he reported with quiet intensity. "I'm seeing at least 3 different types: the standard infected, the larger variants that seem to have enhanced physical capabilities, and something new that's moving with almost human-level intelligence." The evolution of the zombie threat had apparently accelerated beyond their previous understanding, creating multiple classes of undead opponents that would require different tactical approaches to defeat effectively. Jake's explosive charges were positioned to create maximum disruption in the zombie formations while providing cover for their sprint toward the vehicles, but the demolitions expert warned that the blast would also compromise structural integrity in parts of the parking garage. "We'll have maybe 30 seconds of confusion after the explosion before they reorganize, and some of those support columns are going to be unstable afterward," he explained while making final adjustments to the timing mechanisms. "Once we start moving, there's no stopping until we reach the vehicles or we're all dead." Rebecca and David took point positions for the breakthrough assault, their combined law enforcement and security experience making them the logical choice for engaging the most dangerous zombie variants while the rest of the team protected the rescued civilians. "Remember, these things are smart enough to use tactics against us," Rebecca warned while checking her modified crossbow. "Don't assume they'll react like the mindless creatures we fought during the early days of the outbreak." Marcus felt the familiar weight of command responsibility as he prepared to give the order that would commit all of them to a course of action with no possibility of retreat or alternative planning. "Sarah, stay close to Robert and be ready to provide immediate medical attention if anyone gets injured during the breakout. Jennifer, keep Tyler between you and Amanda, and don't stop moving no matter what happens around you." The team's final preparations were interrupted by Tommy's urgent voice cutting through the radio network with information that changed their entire tactical situation. "All teams, the leader variant is moving toward our position with a group of at least 20 zombies, and they're not approaching randomly. This thing has figured out where we are and it's bringing overwhelming force to finish us off." The approaching zombie force meant that their window of opportunity was closing even faster than anticipated, but it also suggested that the leader variant was confident enough in its tactical abilities to commit its reserve forces to a final assault. Jake looked up from his explosive charges with the kind of grim smile that had probably terrified construction site safety inspectors for decades. "Well, Sarge, looks like we're about to find out whether human ingenuity can still beat zombie intelligence when the stakes are life and death." The demolitions expert's confidence was infectious, but Marcus knew that their success would depend not just on superior firepower but on the kind of seamless teamwork that could only be achieved by people who trusted each other completely despite facing impossible odds. "All teams, prepare for breakthrough assault on my mark," Marcus commanded while taking his position near the service tunnel exit. "Remember, we're not just fighting for our own survival anymore. We're fighting to prove that humanity can still adapt and overcome any threat through cooperation, intelligence, and the refusal to surrender to despair." The sound of approaching zombies grew louder in the parking structure above them, but Marcus's team was ready to demonstrate that tactical coordination and mutual sacrifice remained humanity's greatest weapons against any enemy, regardless of how intelligent or organized that enemy had become through the cruel mathematics of evolutionary pressure and survival selection. The explosive charges detonated with a thunderous roar that sent concrete debris cascading through the parking structure while creating exactly the chaos and confusion that Jake had promised, but the zombie response to the blast revealed a level of tactical adaptation that surpassed even their most pessimistic expectations. Instead of scattering in confusion like the undead of previous encounters, the creatures immediately began regrouping into defensive formations while the leader variant issued what could only be described as tactical commands through gestures and that mysterious low-frequency signal that Tommy continued to monitor. Marcus led the breakthrough assault with Rebecca and David flanking him, their coordinated movement cutting through the temporarily disoriented zombie defenses with the precision of a surgical strike, but even as they fought their way toward the vehicles, he could see additional zombie forces converging on their position from multiple directions throughout the parking structure. Sarah maintained her position protecting Robert Walsh while simultaneously treating a laceration that Amanda had sustained during the explosive breach, her medical training allowing her to work efficiently even while surrounded by the sounds of desperate combat and the knowledge that Robert's stimulant injection was rapidly approaching its effective time limit. Jennifer Walsh proved her worth as more than just a protected civilian when she picked up a piece of concrete debris and used it to disable a zombie that had broken through their defensive perimeter, her maternal fury transforming her into a formidable combatant when her family's survival was at stake. The vehicles came into view just as Tommy's voice exploded through their radio network with a warning that chilled everyone's blood. "The leader variant has broken off from the main assault and it's moving to intercept you at the vehicle location with a group of the enhanced variants. This thing has figured out your escape plan and it's trying to cut you off before you can reach transportation." The tactical sophistication displayed by their primary enemy forced Marcus to make split-second adjustments to their escape route, directing the team toward their backup vehicles while Jake provided covering fire with his remaining ammunition. David's security experience proved invaluable as he identified an alternative path through the parking structure that would avoid the leader variant's interception attempt, though it would also require them to traverse an area where structural damage from the explosions had created unstable conditions and potential collapse zones. The confrontation with the leader variant became inevitable when the creature appeared directly between them and their final escape route, its enhanced size and obvious intelligence making it clear that this was no ordinary zombie but rather something that represented the next stage of undead evolution. Rebecca's police training had prepared her for facing dangerous suspects, but nothing had prepared her for an opponent that combined superhuman strength with tactical thinking and the apparent ability to coordinate complex operations across multiple locations simultaneously. Jake's shotgun proved effective against the standard zombies, but the leader variant shrugged off damage that should have been fatal while continuing to direct its subordinates with the kind of battlefield awareness that suggested retained military knowledge or rapidly acquired combat experience. Sarah made the difficult decision to administer her final stimulant injection to Robert Walsh when it became clear that he was beginning to fade despite his determination to keep moving, knowing that this represented their last chance to get him to medical facilities before his injuries proved fatal. Amanda surprised everyone by demonstrating remarkable accuracy with her pistol when she managed to disable two zombies that had flanked their position, her young age proving no barrier to effective combat performance when survival instincts and proper training combined under extreme pressure. The leader variant's tactical mistake came when it focused too much attention on Marcus as the obvious team leader, allowing Rebecca to exploit its momentary distraction and deliver a crossbow bolt to what appeared to be a critical nerve cluster at the base of its skull. David used the creature's temporary disorientation to lead the entire group in a final sprint toward their vehicles, his ability to predict zombie movement patterns proving accurate even when dealing with enhanced variants that possessed obvious intelligence and tactical capabilities. Tommy coordinated their extraction with Phoenix Base while simultaneously monitoring the approaching zombie reinforcements, his technical skills ensuring that their escape route remained viable despite the increasing pressure from multiple enemy forces throughout the metropolitan area. The vehicle started immediately despite weeks of apocalypse conditions, a testament to Jake's mechanical expertise and his insistence on proper maintenance even when resources were scarce and time was precious. Robert Walsh remained conscious during the high-speed evacuation back to Phoenix Base, his survival representing not just a successful rescue operation but proof that human determination and medical expertise could overcome even the most dire circumstances when supported by effective teamwork. The debriefing session that followed their return revealed that their encounter with the leader variant represented the first confirmed evidence of organized zombie intelligence, forcing their entire survivor community to reconsider their long-term survival strategies in light of enemies that could think, plan, and adapt to human tactics. Marcus realized that their successful rescue operation had also served as an inadvertent reconnaissance mission that provided crucial intelligence about the zombie threat's continued evolution, information that would prove invaluable for future survival operations and the development of new tactical approaches. As Sarah worked to stabilize Robert Walsh in their medical facility while Jennifer, Tyler, and Amanda began the process of integrating into their survivor community, Marcus couldn't escape the knowledge that their victory had come at the cost of revealing humanity's tactical capabilities to enemies that were clearly capable of learning from their defeats. The radio chatter from other survivor groups throughout the region confirmed that the zombie intelligence phenomenon wasn't limited to their immediate area, suggesting that humanity was entering a new phase of the apocalypse where survival would require not just superior firepower and tactical coordination, but also the kind of strategic thinking and adaptive capability that had once been exclusively human advantages in the ongoing war for planetary survival.